Somber day here at Cinephile Studios, as you may have heard in the news today. Norm Macdonald passed away at the age of 61 from a cancer battle, uh, a battle he had been fighting for the last 10 years. And as Norm would put it, it was a draw. He did not lose the battle. Um, it's Norm Macdonald is a very interesting comedian, somebody I didn't really come into contact with until more recently, I guess, just because he wasn't someone that I grew up with necessarily, given that he was on SNL in the 90s. The 90s had a great cast, a lot of great names came out of that cast, but Norm Macdonald did Weekend Update for many years. By the time I started to experience his stuff, it was probably because of his appearances on Conan. He had a lot of very famous appearances on Conan. Some of them are older, which I believe were some of the first clips that I found. One of the most famous ones is he's on an episode with I'm gonna forget her name at the moment, but it's the she was on According to Jim, but she was in a movie at the time called Chairman of the Board, which I have heard of, with Carrot Top. And basically, Norm Macdonald, usually on Conan, they would have the second guest just sit on the side while they talk to the other guest on the show. And Norm Macdonald just kept making jokes at her about this movie, was mocking her for being in a movie with Carrot Top, and called the movie Chairman of the Board, Bored board. And I think that was one of the first clips I ever found of him. Some other more obscure ones popped up online, especially during this time, doing when he did a show for Video Podcasting Network, and just very, like jokes that are very rough. He was very good at doing long-winded jokes that would usually lead to punchlines that you've maybe heard like 1,000 times. He would tell jokes that were classic jokes, old school jokes, almost to the point of being like they're not considered funny anymore. But he would take them and just go so long winded with it, with such strange details brought up and so many weird relations brought up, and then it would all lead to a punchline that you've heard a million times, but you couldn't believe that this long story led to this was the joke. Like, seriously. He did it many times, and many times did it on Conan, um, and on his own shows as well. He did actually have a show on Netflix as well in the last couple years. He did a special as well, and I gotta say, he always stayed consistent. Like, he never, I don't think he really ever faltered. I never think he started to wind himself down or overdo his bits. I always thought, I mean, just because the whole joke is that he's basically taking classic bits. I mean, this guy would basically take something like, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" He would take that kind of joke, but turn it into a 10-minute phenomenon. And he was very, he liked to mess with the audience. He, especially if someone was telling him not to do something, he was totally going to be doing more of that. He has appearances on The View where he just keeps bringing up that a president killed someone. He keeps bringing it up, and they keep trying to shut him down. They're like, "Why aren't you trying to be funny?" And he's like, "Have you guys not heard this?" Just very, always completely out of nowhere, out of context with a lot of his jokes. And um, he was someone that I think if you got his humor, you got it. And if you didn't get it, I mean, I could see a lot of people hating the guy, but I thought he was one of the originals. I thought he had just this amazing delivery, and honestly, I wish I would have been able to experience him in his heyday. But even then, he was always good. I just always felt like, in like at least the last 10 years that I've kind of known about him, he was always underrated. Just because I never really heard him talked about in the same way that other comedians were talked about or ranked up there with other comedians. But clearly, you could tell this is a big loss to the comedy world. A lot of big comedic heavyweights of today, and and in back in the past, have been talking about him today, just bringing up how original he was with his almost unoriginal um, humor, but all about that delivery. Had a completely unique delivery, and I haven't seen anything quite like him, and I don't know if we ever will again. He Anyone who tries to do what he did would, I think, be just considered a ripoff. He didn't do a lot of movies, but he I probably experienced him a lot from Adam Sandler's work. He had his own movie called Dirty Work, which, yeah, here it is, which is funny because I've always heard about this movie as being the movie that a lot of people said Hot Rod ripped off because there's a lot of similarities between them. Hot Rod being my favorite movie of all time, so I always wanted to check this movie out just because of that. Um, but yeah, this is definitely like a Norm Macdonald movie. Not one that a lot of people talk about, but I'm sure now with his passing, a lot of people probably will be bringing it up. And his weekend update stuff. He was like, it's weird because there was a time where I don't think as many people were going after, O.J. Simpson as you would think. Like nowadays, it's very popular to knock on the guy, but at the time of the criminal investigation, there weren't a lot of people going after him in the same way they do now. And Norm Macdonald was one of the standouts. I mean, he pretty much got fired from SNL for making all the jokes and not stopping. And you can go watch his compilations, and they're still very funny. He, in a way, is like, it's raunchy humor in a way, given that he talks about some pretty extreme stuff. But it's just that delivery and the fact that it's like, he's kind of like that guy in the room. It's like, what's the one thing I shouldn't bring up right now? I'm gonna bring it up. Like, he's that kind of comedian. But there's something about his delivery that very awkward, very strange, but also still very sweet. Like you would never expect the guy to actually be, you know, a hard hitting jerk or anything like that. He always seemed very sweet, even when he was talking about the worst kind of things. Um, what's great too is that he would kind of go backwards sometimes, where he would just talk about classic jokes and be almost like family friendly in a way, but almost like it just caught everybody off guard always, and you never knew where he was going. You never knew where he was going to go with something. Uh, it's a very sad loss because he was still very active even the last couple of years, and he made his mark on comedy, and I'm glad people are paying tribute. And I gotta say, as a huge fan, it's hitting differently when compared to other celebrity deaths, just because I still consider him to be quite young, and I think I still caught him at a time where he was still producing great stuff, and I didn't consider him one of the old timers quite yet because like I said, he was still younger and he was still producing great work. So it's just it's gonna be hurting for a while. Um, I can't really end this with any kind of Norm-esque joke just because I can't do it quite like him. People have been paying tribute to him by doing that, and they've been doing better than me. But if anything, go watch the Nerd Writer video all about why he works so well. And if you haven't seen any of the stuff, I recommend it because there's much material to choose from, and I'm sure even if you're not a fan of his kind of style of humor, there's probably something out there that you will at least get a chuckle out of. So, rest in peace.